Well, hey everybody, John Rethlin here, and this is every NWA WCW TV champion ranked from worst to best. Yes, more retro content. I'm going to be doing some countdowns for championships like this, and a couple others, like the Cruiserweight title, and the WCW Tag Team Championships. I'll pop up with other ones from WWE also over time, and some retro WCW content, and possibly even some retro WWE pay-per-view content. Because quite frankly, I'm burned out on the current WWE product. Don't worry, you're still going to see the weekly reviews. You're still going to see the pay-per-views. You're still going to see reviews of those. And you're still going to see New Japan content. But you're just going to see this stuff pop up occasionally because I need something to kind of break away from all the current WWE bullshit as far as creative and everything. No fault of the talents. But with the WCW TV Championship all the way back in 1974, Mid-Atlantic TV Championship, all the way till the end in 2000, when it was not in the best state, to say the least, and I'm going to start with that here in a bit. The TV Championship, 10-minute time limit, 15-minute time limit, sometimes 20 to 30-minute time limit on pay-per-view. It really meant a lot. It was a great mid-card title. There were some great champions I'm going to get into later in this countdown. And also, don't be surprised if this is at least a two-parter, because 53 different champions. I mean, a lot of different reigns and everything. I'm not going to go through every single reign because, good God, we would be here all day. But 53 different champions, that's a lot to cover. So let's get right into it with number 53. Jim Duggan held it for 54 days. He found it in the fucking trash when he was a janitor. That's the extent of the damage the WCW did to their championships. All their championships by this point. None of their titles meant anything. Even the WCW Championship didn't mean anything, but the TV Championship was found in the trash. Now, I'm going to get to why it was found in the trash. Scott Hall dumped it in the fucking trash at one point in 99. And then Duggan, sometime later, while working as a janitor, because that's how you use a guy that, while he was never the greatest worker and everything, you use somebody like Jim Duggan as a janitor, cleaning up and everything, instead of maybe, I don't know, just buying out his contract and letting him go, you use him as a janitor. One of the best brawlers that Mid-South Wrestling had, at least in the early 80s. He found a way to make it, early to mid-80s, I think. He found a way to make things work in WWE and stayed there for a while. Went to WCW, was U.S. champion. That wasn't the best idea, but still, he hung around for a while. And the best thing you could do with him is make him a janitor. But that aside, he was TV champion for 54 days. And his reign started off with him finding it in a fucking dumpster. Trash, dumpster, whatever, it just... For fuck's sake, this is what WCW was doing at this point. And it was just fucking rotten. And he was the last WCW TV champion. Because then the TV title was retired. That's the legacy of the championship. It ended after Duggan had found it in the trash, held it for almost 2 months, and then was vacated. And just retired or whatever. I always wish that, like the NXT UK would bring it back or something like that. Or NXT would have brought it back, but they brought in the North American title. Or the WWE would do it on SmackDown. They want to make SmackDown the wrestling show and stuff like that. I just wish that other companies, or even maybe the revived NWA, if they get things going and everything, could have a TV championship on their big programs and stuff like that. And just bring it back. Because I love the TV title concept. And I hate to bury Jim Duggan because it wasn't even necessarily his fault because he was just casting the role. But for fuck's sake, found in the trash. Number 52. Tom Zenk, the Z-Man, 34 days as champion. I hate to speak ill of the dead in most cases. There are some that I don't necessarily feel bad about. But Tom Zenk is part of either the Can-Am connection with Rick Martel or, teaming with Brian Pillman later on when he went to WCW, even as a stint in the AWA. He was not a guy, he wasn't bad. I mean, he did do that crossbody into nothing, diving through the air because he messed up the spot with Brian Lee. That which on the Clash, I think it was the November 90 Clash. That was hilarious. He would win the TV title soon after that. They thought, hey, this guy did something incredibly stupid. Let's give him the TV title. I think he beat Arn Anderson for it. Or maybe he won it earlier in the year. I mean, I don't necessarily... I know it was sometime in 91 that he won it. And he only held it for a fucking month. He didn't hold it for that goddamn long. And he just was never going to be a guy that worked all that well as a champion. As a tag team champion, sure, he would have fucking worked as a tag team champion, but that was it. That was fucking it. He was never going to be a singles guy. He held it for 34 days, and that was it. What the fuck else you want me to say about a guy that was not really worth the singles push that they gave him? Yeah, he was sort of over with kids. Maybe he was sort of over me when I was 9, 10 years old when he was starting to get that push, but I didn't necessarily care for the guy. Sorry, nothing against the guy as a person. It's just he was never all that good or that impressive as a wrestler. And then we get to number 51. Disco Inferno had 2 reigns, 63 days combined. Disco Inferno, quite frankly, should be at the bottom because Disco Inferno never belonged in wrestling, ever. He never belonged competing for the Cruiserweight title, the TV title, tag titles, whatever. He was a goddamn joke, and the fact that Impact has recently used him as a way to get their Knockouts division over, I guess would be the way to look at it, is a testament to just how stupid that creative is. Because, sorry, the women should not be, they should be competing against men of equal stature if we want to go with that. Disco Inferno couldn't wrestle his way out of a wet paper bag. And the fact that he was TV champion twice, a prestigious title at that point, that started on the downward spiral where it wasn't really seen as that important of a championship after that. Sorry, Disco Inferno's been shit, always will be shit. There's no reason really to cover more on him. Now we get to number 50. Rick Martel held it for 6 days. He suffered an injury. I want to say it was Super Brawl in 98. So it was Super Brawl 8, I believe. And it was against Booker. It was against Booker and somebody else. Maybe it was just against Booker. Because they did a couple TV title matches on there and it was a bit weird. But Rick Martel was only champion for like 6 days. He had gotten back into in-ring shape and everything. But then it suffered an injury. I can't remember if it was a knee injury or if it was an arm injury, pec injury, something like that. But that effectively ended his career. It might have even been a concussion as well, actually. It was not a very good night for the former model and one of the much better workers of his generation. Rick Martel, I always felt, was a guy that didn't get his just due. He held it for 6 days, and that was pretty much it. He had to relinquish it, and then was effectively done as far as like being in the mainstream limelight. I think he might have wrestled more after that. I don't know. People would have to hit up somebody that knows more about Rick Martel's career. But it's a shame because I wanted to rank Rick Martel higher. He won a championship in WCW, which is more than he did in WWE. Well, at least a singles championship. It's just a damn shame. And then we get to number 49, Scott Hall, 8 days. I believe he was U.S. champion, TV champion. He won, I think, the TV title from Rick Steiner, and then threw it in the trash. I should have ranked Scott Hall just above Duggan, now that I think about it. But at least with Scott Hall, you could sort of see what they were trying to do with it. It's like he should have just handed it to one of his NWO buddies and just said, here, hand it to Vincent. Because the closest thing to title that Vincent would ever get, no, the $1 Million Championship belt doesn't fucking count. Sorry, it just doesn't fucking count at all. But yeah, he threw in the trash after 8 days. Hooray! And then we get to number 48, Alex Wright, 32 days. If I'm right, I think he won it from Chris Jericho. And that was a little odd. Alex Wright was would have been much better being brought in as a heel than being a babyface at first, because it was Great American Bash 95 that he wrestled Brian Pillman. And boy, the crowd was just absolutely cheering Pillman and just fucking railing against Alex Wright. And he eventually did turn heel, and then they did the Berlin character, and then they did a bald version of Alex Wright, and it didn't fucking work at all. Does he even still wrestle? Because he was only 25, 26 when WCW shut down. Unless that was that. But yeah, his reign as TV champion just really wasn't that much. It was just over a month. It didn't fucking matter. It's kind of fucking shit. And then we get to number 47. Sweet Ebony Diamond. 2 reigns, 22 days. Not 2 reigns of 22 days, but 22 days combined in 2 reigns. I mean, really, what else do you want me to say there? That's when they were kind of... let's give the title to somebody, pop the crowd and everything, but then he's going to lose it right back. That's essentially what this was. Number 46, Bobby Eaton, 15 days. Bobby Eaton did not hold the TV title as long as Disco Inferno. When Bobby Heenan, Bobby Heenan was a better worker than Disco Inferno, but Bobby Eaton, who was a much better worker than Disco Inferno could have ever hoped to have been, was, TV champion, should have been much more of a force as a singles wrestler. Even though by that point he'd been working in Memphis for a while. Then he worked in Mid-South and then in World Class for a little bit as part of the Midnight Express, and then in the Jim Crockett promotion era, and then was signed to a contract in WCW after Stan Lane and Jim Cornette left, because Bobby had, I believe, he had kids. I can't remember, and not the Heath Slayer thing. I can't remember if he had 2 or 3 kids. But Bobby Eaton took the money, okay, whatever. He was what he was. He just should have been used better. TV champion, U.S. champion, something like that. Because, yes, Eaton could not really talk all that well, but work rate would have put him over the top. I'm sorry, he should have been a TV and US champion. And for a longer period than he was, because obviously he was a TV champion or I wouldn't be mentioning him on this list. It's just really fucking sad. It really is. But then we get to Johnny Weaver, 21 days over one reign. Okay. I had nothing against Johnny Weaver. I don't know that much about him, but 21 days. Obviously, they didn't see that much in him, and this is, again, probably one of those to pop the crowd and then switch it to somebody else. And then we get to number 44, Mark Youngblood, 21 days. I mean, again, another three-week reign. Mark Youngblood was actually seen as a bit of a pretty over babyface, but just 3 weeks, you can't get established as a champion in 3 weeks. It doesn't matter if you got national TV or if you got just house show markets or whatever. Sure, the crowd may pop for it, but if you don't give a chance for a title to be established, 3 weeks ain't gonna do anything. It just ain't gonna fucking do anything. And then we get to number 43, Bad Leroy Brown. Not bad Leroy Brown, baddest man in the whole damn town, and cue the song and everything, which I'm not gonna play because I don't want to get I don't want to get a copyright claim. 28 days. Okay, he held it for about a month, or just under a month. Held it for 4 weeks. Okay, cool. That's fine. A little better. I mean, holding it for about a month isn't the worst thing in the world, but holding it for less than a month, it just proves that the company really didn't have that much faith in you, or, oh, hey, I want to leave. Oh, here, let's give you a title for a few weeks so you stay. Again, this is all just guesswork by me. I don't know. I'm just guessing by how they did this stuff with championships. Like, tossing it around that much doesn't really do some good. It doesn't really do much good. And then we get to number 42, Conan, 29 days. Conan was a much better U.S. champion than he was a TV champion. And by that point, he was mobile enough still. I mean, obviously, age and father time catches up with everybody. But he only held it for like a little bit. And this was during their, I think it was during the Wolfpack and NWO feud. NWO Wolfpack and NWO Black and White feud. Or it might even been when he was part of the Filthy Animals, because there really wasn't a lot memorable with the titles, or at least for the right reasons by that point. And 29 days was what it was. Number 41, Ron Bass, 58 days. Yeah, Outlaw Ron Bass. Okay, cool. 58 days, 2 months. All right. Bass was kind of seen as a bit of a heel. Bit of a brawler. Tough guy, solid guy. So, okay, put TV title on him for a little bit. Have somebody take title off of him. That babyface could get a shot in the arm. And I'm sure Ron Bass worked as a babyface at some point, but I always remember him as a heel. And granted, that was later in his career, because he was in WWE, like Outlaw Ron Bass. And if I remember right, Bruce Beefcake cut his hair at one point. And the fact that that is what I remember from his WWE run probably proves that he was just there as an enhancement talent. But yep, TV champion, almost 2 months, cool. Number 40, The Renegade, 91 days. I want to make it clear that it's terrible that the man himself, playing a Renegade, felt the need to take his own life. That is never the answer. Never at all. The guy tried. He could execute a pretty good top rope splash. Actually pretty impressive for a tall guy like that. And tall and, fairly solid guy. He wasn't bad in the ring. But making him a knockoff Ultimate Warrior killed any chance for him to get over right there. Now, he was TV champ. I think he beat, if I'm right, I think he beat Arn Anderson. He beat Paul Orndorff, I believe, at Bash at the Beach 95. That was ridiculous. He dropped it. I want to say he either dropped it back to Anderson, or I think DDP might actually beat him. But he didn't have the title for all that long. And then he was kind of pushed down and everything. And then he was made a biker-like guy. That didn't really work all that well. And again, nothing against the Renegade, nothing against the man playing the Renegade. It is terrible that he felt the need to take his own life. As a champion, I remember it being memorable for the wrong reasons. Like, he really shouldn't have been champion. It's a good thing they gave somebody new a chance. That gimmick freaking killed any chances that he could be taken seriously. And nothing against the performer, who actually, again, wasn't all that bad. Number 39, Barry Windham, 26 days. Yep. Barry Windham, one of the best workers of the 80s and early 90s. Held the championship for 26 days. Now, he did better as U.S. champion, don't get me wrong. He did much better because he won it from Dusty Rhodes, Great American Bash 88. But by this point, Barry as TV champion was not the worst thing in the world, but he didn't hold it long enough to really get that established. It's just really, really sad, because Barry Windham was an incredible worker. I mean, he obviously wouldn't be wrestling now, but he was an incredible worker, whether in tag teams, whether face or heel. Yes, he got out of shape by 93, 94, because that happened with everybody in the goddamn family. But he was somebody that was such a solid, great hand in the ring, and it didn't matter who you put him against, he could work with them. I just wish he would have gotten a longer run. And then we go to number 38. We get Stevie Ray at 27 days. The lesser singles popular star, Stevie Ray of Harlem Heat and everything. And I know that sounds worded a little weird, because Stevie Ray was a really good worker. I mean, I'm sure still works here and there, but he is in his 50s at this point. Maybe even near 60. But anyway, he was somebody that I would have liked to have seen get more of a singles run and maybe more of a chance. But by that point, he was hurt. He had bad knees. He had been working longer than Booker had. He was also a bit older, so that factors into it. Sometimes age and mileage really plays a factor in this. Some people can beat it for a while, some people can't. He was champion for just under a month. His brother did better as champion. I will actually be talking about his brother later in this countdown, or in the next video. But then we get to Joe LeDuc, or just LeDuc. I mean, that's the way they write it down or whatever. That's the way it was written down, so I believe it's Joe LeDuc. 23 days, 2 reigns. Yeah, it's pretty much the same as, Sweet Ebony Diamond. Just 2 reigns and not barely over 10 days for each of them. I mean, come on. What do you expect? I ranked him up there because of the name value and stuff like that, and he meant something to that part of the that part of the world, the wrestling world. I can't really tell you all that much memorable about him, and I didn't want to just rank all the older guys or all the title reigns that were like from back in the day that I never got to see TV of. So I'm looking at facts. I'm looking at, okay, based on name value and all that stuff, that's why I rank them the way I do. And then we get to number 36, Danny Miller, 72 days. I'm not that familiar with the name Danny Miller. 72 days, so almost 2.5 months, close to it. Nothing to sneeze at. That was fine. I'm guessing that this guy seemed more like he was an amateur type wrestler that they tried to give a chance to be, a worldwide sensation, or at least a national sensation, and it ultimately didn't work. I don't know about Danny Miller's career. Please let me know in the comments if there are some matches I should check out from the guy. But hey, 72 days just based on that alone, guy's pretty good. That's saying something. We're getting a little bit better with the reigns here. Then we get Prince Iaukea, 49 days. Why was Prince Iaukea not used better in the company? I mean, he wasn't amazing, but he was a better talent than I think people gave him credit for, and certainly could have been better than the artist formerly known as Prince Iaukea. Gee, it was late WCW, late 99, 2000. I wonder who came up. It was Russo. Russo came up with that. Or Ferrara. If it was Russo, whatever. Typical Russo. If it was Ferrara, fat piece of shit. Doesn't deserve the time of day, even though I'll rant on him when I talk about the every WCW or every cruiserweight champion ranked from worst to best. Back to Prince Iaukea. The guy was pretty goddamn good in the ring. Beat, I believe, Steven Regal. If I recall correctly, he beat Steven Regal and then defended it against Rey Mysterio and then lost it back. I can't remember if he lost it back to Regal or who he lost it back to. But I do remember the shocking thing of Iaukea suddenly winning. Well, hey, anything can happen in WCW. And that was pretty cool. Sure, he didn't hold it for 2 months. But still, it was a shocking win, and that's why I have to put it up here. Then we get to number 34, Perry Saturn, 35 days, 1 reign. Perry Saturn is another person that's forgotten about as being a pretty goddamn good worker. Good in tag teams, good, solid worker, whether it's ECW, WCW, WWE. I think, was he even an Impact for a little bit? I think he was an Impact in the earlier days. But Saturn is somebody that I think is forgotten about as just being pretty goddamn good. Now, he wasn't great. Wasn't great on the mic. He did the best he could with the moppy thing, which was a punishment because he beat up a jobber, but maybe that jobber shouldn't have been a fucking idiot. But I digress. Saturn was somebody that worked just with about any role you gave him. And 35 days, cool. All right. I wish he would have held longer, but at that point, they were just throwing the title on anybody just to see what they could fucking do. Number 33, Chris Benoit, 3 reigns, 43 days. This was, during the famous Best of 7, which became a Best of 8 series with Booker T. It was over the TV title, and then it was later over the U.S. title in WWE. And yes, that was the thing that actually happened. They tried to recapture that, and some of it worked, and some of it didn't. But what I like about this is the fact that it worked. It worked because Benoit was legit. He was a legit athlete, and yes, I'm putting aside the fact that he murdered his wife and kid, and screw your conspiracy theories, he did. He does not belong in the Hall of Fame. Putting that to the side, him and Booker had some incredible matches. Yes, he didn't get to hold the title that long, but it still fucking worked really well. He was absolutely incredible in the ring. The matches him and Booker had, even if they were only given a few minutes, were strong, the strong style stuff, the heavy chops, the great moves, the snap suplexes, the fact that they could do variations and make every match different proved that this title actually meant something. They tried to make that title mean something. Because A was trying to establish Benoit more as a singles guy, even though he'd been around quite a bit longer, and seen more as a singles guy. Wanted to also establish Booker as being somebody like he was going to be the breakout star of Harlem Heat. So there we go. And then we get to number 32. Dick Slater, 2 reigns, 60 days. Dick Slater was somebody, okay, taking any personal stuff with him and putting it to the side, which is hard to do, but you'll see what I mean. Look it up, see what I mean. I don't think that it's all hearsay, so you never fucking know, but he was somebody that for a time was very well received as a brawler, and whether he's a babyface or a heel, the guy could go in the ring. The guy could get a whole lot out of any opponent he was given. He really did work hard, and sure, okay, average of, a month a reign, not all that great, but, Dick Slater meant something back then. And then was actually in the Nitro era of WCW, and then I believe suffered a back injury in '96 when he was teaming with Mike Enos, and that effectively ended his career. But then we get to number 31, Fit Finlay, 41 days. Fit Finlay is somebody that's forgotten about as being just an incredible brawler, great worker. His matches with Steven Regal were great. His run in WWE when he was able to, get back in the ring. After training a whole bunch of women and everything and working with a bunch of them like Trish, Lita, I want to say even helped with Beth, and people, and, other women like that. He really did work a lot with the women, and you could tell, you could see some of his influence in them. Finlay meant a whole lot, whether it was WCW, whether it was WWE. The guy is fucking great in the ring, and I wish he would have gotten a longer reign. If I remember right, I think it was a knee injury of some kind. It was like where he nearly had to lose his leg because of severe damage to his ligaments and stuff like that. Fortunately, he didn't have to lose his leg, but he had to retire for a bit. And I think his TV title reign came shortly before that happened. It obviously would have been weird if it came after that happened. But yeah, it almost is a shame that he didn't get more of a run in WWE or WCW and in WWE for that matter, even though his WWE run was longer. Number 30, Rufus R. Jones, 98 days, 2 reigns. Now we're getting into where things are getting a little bit better and people are gaining titles for enough time to actually establish that they are decent champions. Rufus R. Jones is not somebody I'm familiar with beyond reputation alone. I admit that. I don't know everything. Shocking as that is. But, nearly 100 days, 2 reigns, that's something. He actually, what limited footage I've seen a little bit of him. He's a pretty good worker, could get people fired up and everything, and, could, in his day, could make some pretty good comebacks and actually work pretty well with people. So, and it didn't really matter what kind of opponent you put with him. So, maybe I saw later footage of him and I wasn't that impressed. But what little bit I did see that looked to be in the prime of his career, guy seemed to work pretty well. So, we get to number 29, Ultimo Dragon, 72 days. Got to see Ultimo Dragon at a indie show, Defy Northwest Wrestling, in March of this year. In 2019, that guy moves just as goddamn well as he ever did. Got to face Matt Cross, aka, he's from, Son of Havoc from Lucha Underground. They tore it up. It was probably one of the best matches of the night. Probably co-match of the night. I got to meet Ultimo and it was great, and I got to tell him that I really just loved the stuff that he did all throughout his career. He had a translator with him, because his English is still here and there, but nice guy. But anyway, he was somebody you could just always count on to deliver a great match. And if I remember right, he also had an elbow injury that actually knocked him out for a while off of mainstream. He had to go back to, I think, All Japan. I think he went back to All Japan after his WCW run ran dry, and then went to WWE for a bit. But he could make the TV title mean something. He was somebody that could work with just about anybody. Yes, the kicks, the strikes, and all that, and the Asai moonsault. He could work with anybody. He's another one that I wish could have gotten like 100, 120 day reign and really given that title, some much needed credibility beyond just 2 months. So then we get to number 28, Scott Steiner, 108 days, 2 reigns. Scott Steiner, it's a bit weird that you think about how many reigns he's had and how well he's done in the ring and how good he's done. And some of his reigns, you look back on, you're like, well, that's not really all that long. But Scott Steiner can make any title matter if you gave it to him. Whether it was tag teams, whether it was TV, whether it was a world title, he really did make a lot of titles matter. And for a time, Scott Steiner is pretty goddamn good. Now, yeah, he's still wrestling now. I don't know why, because I'm a little worried that he's not going to be able to walk, because the guy is in his 50s and clearly is not even the athlete he was 3 years ago. But his time with the TV title was pretty damn good. I believe he beat Jericho for it. I believe he either beat Conan or Jericho for it. It was one of the two. But then he held it for a bit, and then I think had to give it up due to injury. And he had held it before. It's just, Scott Steiner was a great champion. It just, injuries always seemed to catch up with him, and he just couldn't hold the title for that long. But by God, when he became Big Papa Pump, that really kind of exploded. That made his career just explode, and not just because of the garden hose veins that he had in his arms. And yeah, I know I tried flexing with me having my, spaghetti string arms, but still, yeah, those veins are freaking insane. Now we get to number 27, DDP, 42 days. DDP was feuding with Johnny B. Bad at that point. And I think won the TV title from him, and I don't remember who the fuck he lost it. I actually think he lost it to DDP, or lost it to DDP. It's a Spider-Man meme. But he lost it to Johnny B. Bad, actually, and I think Johnny B. Bad lost it to somebody else. Because then that was when they decided to do, a complete reinvention of DDP's character. But he was somebody that can make a title matter. He made the U.S. title matter, despite the fact he only had it for a little bit of time. The same with the world title. You give DDP anything, you can spin it into gold. And I actually enjoyed the feud he had with Johnny B. Bad. I actually enjoyed that because they produced some pretty good matches. Now, some of them weren't great, but from like Halloween Havoc 95 on to stuff like that, they produced some pretty good matches. And kind of a forgotten, trilogy or set of matches that really weren't all that bad. And I think should be looked back on and like, hey, you can see that these guys are pretty good goddamn workers. We then get to number 26, Larry Zbyszko, 52 days. Yeah, this is when Larry Zbyszko was not, obviously, I don't want to say as motivated, but this is when his career was starting to wind down. It was soon after this that he would become an announcer and stuff like that. Because this was before the Dangerous Alliance stuff, but he was somebody that after this, he would wrestle a little bit, and then he would come back, and he would be like, the announcer, occasional wrestler and stuff like that. But him as TV champion, I mean, he was a former AWA champion. He wrestled all over the goddamn world, was well established. Bruno Sammartino's protege. He was somebody, tag teams or otherwise, that could really just work with just about anybody. And Larry is a really incredible worker, and I often think, even though he's in WWE Hall of Fame and stuff like that, I think he gets forgotten about. You really go back and look back at his stuff, and even in Dangerous Alliance days and stuff like that, maybe even when he was teaming with Arn Anderson as the Enforcers, and his TV title run, which didn't last all that long, he was an incredible worker. I really ignore his time when he was wrestling in TNA, because by then he was just an authority figure that got drunk with power and feuded with Eric Young. That wasn't all that great. But in his heyday, he was pretty goddamn good. Number 25, Angelo Mosca. 2 reigns, 143 days. Yes, Angelo Mosca, one of the scariest guys that you could ever see. Somebody that was really fucking good. I mean, just scary because of just how big he was, how powerful he was, how over he was. That's a name that still resonates with a lot of fans today. Older fans and stuff like that. Angelo Mosca was one hell of a talent. And you could put a title on him, especially if you got him over and used him the right way in your market. He could work with just about anybody. And I know I said that about some of them, but he really could work with just about anybody. He had a lengthy career, one hell of a talent, and that's why I'm putting him up here, just over halfway on the list. I'm going to do a couple more, and I'm going to wrap it up on this. Chris Jericho, 112 days. Yes, 112 days is after I think his Cruiserweight title reign had ended, or shortly after it ended. He was TV champion, then he was kind of written off TV shortly after losing it to Scott Steiner, which wasn't all that great. Yeah, Jericho, I almost wish that things had worked out better for him in WCW, because then he had that feud with Goldberg that didn't go anywhere because Goldberg didn't want to work with him because he didn't feel that a smaller guy could be convincing against him, despite the fact Jericho could out-wrestle Goldberg at any point, now or back in WCW. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm glad that Goldberg's okay, but after that Super Showdown fiasco, I don't want to see Goldberg wrestle again. Jericho maybe should have held it a bit longer, but I think there was like a contract dispute thing because he wasn't featured on TV much after losing the WCW TV title, which is a shame because he was really, really good and a really snarky heel and really smarmy and could work well. No, well, it was what it was. Number 23, Greg Valentine, 4 reigns, 157 days. His opinions of women staying in the kitchen aside, I know he said those years ago, but I have a feeling he probably still means them. And he's not a good representation of my state. He was born in Seattle, or at least billed from Seattle, Washington. Since I wasn't there, so I don't know if he was actually born there. But this guy, for a time, and for even the time in the WWE, great mid-card champion, great heel, always looked like he was miserable, which if I looked like a half-baked, overstuffed potato, I would be upset too. He was somebody that you could absolutely just say, hey, okay, work with this babyface and everything. You can be the full-on dick heel. You get the most out of this guy and everything. Let's build a program. Let's do all this stuff and everything. TV champion, U.S. champion, Greg Valentine was really goddamn good. Worked with Roddy Piper over the U.S. title and stuff like that. But this time as TV champion, okay, maybe not factored in all them. It was under 40 days each reign, but still, Greg Valentine was very reliable as far as being a good mid-card champion. Could never really be the guy, but mid-card, sure. He really could work well. Number 22, Roddy Piper, 94 days. Roddy Piper, yes, did hold a mid-card championship before he got to WWE. It's a shame that WWE only gave him like a 2-month Intercontinental title reign, or just over 2 months. I think it was like almost 2.5 months, but still. He was somebody back in that day that he was all fired up and everything. He was super over. Piper is somebody I miss to this day. It is really sad that he died when he did. He would be 65 this year. He said that he would make it 65, and unfortunately he didn't. But during this era, it was hard to get better than Piper, at least as far as fire fire and desire. And I'm not talking about Mandy Rose and Sonya Deville, all due respect to them. He just had so much passion and so much ability to get himself over, but also get his opponents over. He could make any title mean something, even if you only gave it to him for a few days. Thank God they gave it to him for a few months. But Piper's ranked lower on this list because he didn't get to hold it as long as he probably should have. And then we get to number 21. This is where I'm going to finish it off. Paul Orndorff. Fucking love Paul Orndorff. This guy should have been WWE champion at one point. He was great in WCW. It's a shame that he had like neck issues that led to one of his arms, the muscles in his arm atrophying, so he had to, take some time off. That's why if you noticed him later in his career, before he had to retire in 95, before he came back, in 2000 very briefly, that's why if you notice one of his arms was like about as thin as mine, it's because the muscle started to atrophy because he didn't get it fixed. But during his heyday, during like his time when he was TV champion, the guy was fucking incredible. And if I remember right, I can't remember actually, he might have been the one to lose it to Renegade if I remember right. He was fucking terrific though. Paul Orndorff, great talent, great heel. He was a good babyface in his earlier days as well, but he always worked better as a heel. In his time as TV champion, that's a lot of fucking days. That's a lot of days. That's like, 5.5 months and stuff like that. It's a pretty fucking big deal. That's where I'm going to leave this off though. So I will do 20 through 1 later in the day, or possibly even right after I record this. But anyway, agree, disagree, what I said, like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Ritland. I will see you soon.